Okay, welcome again tonight. Our class is on Make Peace, a strategic guide for achieving lasting peace in Israel, from the book written by Elisha Perel. We are looking at chapter 8, and it's a painful chapter. The focus here is about some very misguided but well-meaning Jews. And not only Jews, but Jews who have some understanding of Judaism. Typically, the people involved in this have a limited understanding. Yeah, Jews versus Jews. Yeah, they have a limited understanding of Torah, and typically they choose to focus on the parts that they want to talk about, the things that they want to focus on, and then neglect the rest of it. So it's pick and choose again, right? And so that's the challenge. So basically, what we're going to talk about tonight is peace, justice, and integrity, and investigating the Jewish social justice concepts, right? So we've talked about the Torah narrative that gives clear support for why do Jews live in the Holy Land. God gave us this Holy Land. It's our land. We never gave it away. And all of that land is ours. And by divine right, not because of a bunch of other people in organizations around the world, things like that. No, it's by divine right only. And therefore, it's not only it's our land outright, but it's God-given. It cannot be retracted. Nothing to talk about. Now, back in 1978, some well-meaning Jews, mostly in Israel, their focus was, we'll work on the details later, but let's have peace now. They called the organization Peace Now. And their intention was, let's just stop killing and let's figure this out. At the bottom line, we'll come back to it later, but the bottom line is, you can make peace with people who want to have peace, and you have a partnership in that concept. But when you know beyond a shadow of a doubt and clearly that they don't want this, you can't have a partnership with an unwilling partner. It doesn't work. So the organization known as Peace Now met with a lot of publicity and a lot of push in the movement, right? But at the end of the day, the members of this movement argue that the only way to achieve peace is to give Arabs everything they demand. They don't say it that way, right? But that, at the end of the day, that's what they are saying, right? The pragmatic argument for Peace Now was concessionary rhetoric, right? There was a meeting between one of the founders there, Ron Edelist. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Ron Edelist. In 1990, he actually had a meeting with Lubavitcher Rebbe. And Rand said, I would really like to know if the Rebbe is still on the opinion that we need to keep all the territories, Judea, Samaria, Gaza, regardless of public opinion. Now, the statement he makes right there is telling. He's worried about public opinion. He's not worrying about right. He's not worrying about wrong. He's worried about public opinion, right? The Rebbe responded, if I can influence you, then I hope you will accept this premise. All of the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, and anyone who gives of it, a part of it, to anyone else is robbing, stealing, Amcha Yisrael. They're stealing from the Jewish people. And his response, Edel's response was, even if that leads to war against the world, again, you see where his head is, right? It's not about right or wrong.
Yep.
It's all about what does the world think, right? So the Rebbe responded, those who want to fight against the people of Israel, they don't need a specific reason. They want to harm the Bnei Yisrael regardless of how Israel behaves. The Rebbe said, I come from Russia, where there were always blood libels against Jews, not because the Jews were guilty, but because the Gentiles sought to libel and harm the Jewish people. It's that simple. Adelus responded, is it not possible that the Gentiles will ever make peace with us? And the Rebbe's response was, it doesn't matter what you or I do. If they have the ability to harm us, you and I cannot prevent them. Only the Holy One, blessed be He, can protect us. Moreover, the Holy One, blessed be He, does not need my encouragement to protect Israel, because every Jew, wherever they are, and all the more so in Eretz HaKodesh, the Holy Land, is God's only child. Do not waste time looking for reasons to give away parts of the land of Israel. So that was very clear. This is God-given land. You can't give away any of it. And as far as your worry about the goyim of the world, they're going to do what they're going to do, right?
Did the Rebbe say what we should do with all the Arabs that are living there?
We've covered that a little bit before. We'll do some more of that. But the beginning of the conversation really has to come down to, we're here, it's our land, we're not leaving.
Yeah.
If we would be strong and forceful and insistent and unapologetic, other things will work its way out. The only one we have to appease is God. That's the only one. The rest of it can be worked out with God. But it has to begin with a self-esteem of our own. So in this exchange, Adelus suggests to the Rebbe that on pragmatic grounds, Israel should relinquish territories so that it will not be harmed by the international community. And the Rebbe is responding, the concessions will not help, arguing hatred towards Jewish people has been a persistent historical phenomenon, deep-rooted causes that go beyond any specific Jewish policies or actions. Stop trying to appease others, right? Pam, do you have hang on a second. So let's look at the fundamental arguments of the Peace Now group and what their core value is, right? So I don't want to say that we're talking now about the enemy, but it just brings back reflections of Benedict Arnold. Anyway,
Yeah.
their intention is to save lives. Their intention is to have peace. The concept is good, but it's just flat out ridiculous.
But you know what the road to hell is paved with, right?
Good intentions, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so Peace Now and its ideological descendants argue the arguments, they tend to be moral, not pragmatic. That's where the bottom line is. Thank you for the up there. Moral versus pragmatic, Their claims have the force of the value of peace, which is so fundamental to the entire Torah. But practically speaking, how do you do that, right? They shout that handing over all of the territories to the Arabs is an act of justice and integrity, and consequently all the territories of the land of Israel should be given to the Arabs. But that's just suicidal. It's just straight out suicidal. Peace Now, the Rebbe said very clearly, Peace Now is bringing destruction upon the Jews and upon the land of Israel. They are destroyers and demolishers of the Jewish people and the Eretz Yisrael. May God save us. So those are strong words, right? But they're strong words because lives are at risk. Again, we talked about at the very beginning, all the conversation about the halacha is all about saving lives. Their ideology put Jewish lives at risk. The Rebbe adds that the fact that their policy is destructive to Israel is evident from the fact that their supporters are interested in destroying Israel as a Jewish state. Yes, peace is a fundamental Torah value, but peace can only be had with a viable partner. And we all know that the intentions of the PLO and all those that have followed them, we know that. They've confirmed their intentions again at one gathering after another. They intend to expel all the Jews from the entire land of Israel. The current slogan is from the river to the sea. That's their intention. They are not any not holding anything back. They're saying very clearly what their intentions are. No secret. It's been printed, it's been proclaimed since 1948. So it's clear that any agreement made with them is not going to lead to peace.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy. It's a hallucination. It's very destructive because we're not dealing with the reality here. And even when concessions are made on condition that they'll sign a piece of paper that they're making peace for now, which is what peace now wants, not only does this not help, but actually it endangers the Jewish lives by the illusion of peace while they restructure and rebuild the enemy. Some people think that terrorism began recently. That's a lie. Terrorism has unfortunately been going on every month since the 6-Day War. And that's because the Arabs were emboldened when they realized the Jews are afraid, and they had sent emissaries saying that they wanted to concede territory. Like every time we end up taking territory back home, right? Then the enemy screams and it cries out that what a terrible thing we've done. And then Jews turn around and say, we want to give you this land. We want to give you back this land. We want to give away this land.
Terrorism has started way before the 6-Day War.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, why do we listen to other countries, free countries, that keep telling us over and over, it'll be peaceful if, and then they never ask the Arabs to give back. They always ask us to give back.
So this is part of this is very much a part of the social justice concept.
Oh.
We're going to talk about that right now, okay? This attitude of backing off empowers the local Arabs until it reaches the point that they're killing Jews. And this was the Rebbe talked about this back in a time when they just entered Hebron and killed people in a yeshiva, right? So clearly, peace now is not a viable option because you have no one to work with. That's not their goal. So where's this idea coming from? They're talking about the Torah values. These are Jews. So they're claiming Torah values of peace and justice and everything else. So yes, there's importance about this text, but you can't look at just those words and then make up how to do it yourself. You have to have a holistic approach to the bigger picture, which is the rest of the Torah. The authentic Jewish approach is to turn to the eternal wisdom of the Torah and the code of Jewish law. The code of Jewish law given by Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be, who governs the world, knows all the calculations of justice and integrity. He is the essence of goodness. So by following the path of the code of Jewish law, there will undoubtedly be true good, not only for the Jewish people, but for the people of the world. So you open up the code of Jewish law and you ask, in such a circumstance, what should we do? And the rules that even when only the rule in Jewish law is that even when one only hears that the enemy are approaching, and even when they're coming for straw and stubble, you have to preemptively attack with weapons so they will not capture the city. Because even if they're coming to steal, if you try to prevent them, what happens? They attack. So already you know this is going to escalate. So we have to go forward in advance and preemptive attack and make sure it stops. Peace Now and other similar organizations ultimately derive their approach from the prevailing cultural narratives over native Jewish values, recasting Jewish values to align with the dominant culture. It's the story of Hanukkah all over again. The Greeks came in, they wanted to make everybody like them. The Jews decided that they'll start going to the gymnasiums and start dressing and participating in all these other culture things because that's the dominant culture of the world. That's not our job. Our job is to stay Jewish and to stay proudly Jewish and follow the Torah. In any given time period, there have been conflicts between Jews who remain faithful to the narrative to the native Jewish laws and cultures, and those Jews who lacked the confidence in their own history and tried to imitate the dominant local culture. The Rebbe put it like this: throughout Jewish history, there have always, proudly speaking, been two sorts of Jews. Broadly speaking, two sorts of Jews. Some did everything to fit into the dominant culture, and others followed the Torah path no matter what. While many in the pacifist camp claim to fight for Jewish values, when we study their position more deeply, we see that it really is just the prevailing cultural narrative. Mm-hmm. And in this respect, they are just like the Hellenizing Jews in the Hanukkah story. The Hellenizers had no conviction and constantly gave in to all of the dominant culture's demands. In contrast, Jews who held strong to their convictions ultimately succeeded and garnered respect from the non-Jews. We have to be who we truly are. We have to follow Torah and mitzvahs. We have to be proudly Jewish. How do you do that? Jewish education. Just like we're here now tonight, and just like we're looking at what is the Jewish perspective, the Torah perspective on what's going on in the Holy Land, we're asking, what does God want us to do? We're asking, what does the Torah tell us to do? That's what we need to do. That's what we want to look at. Learn Jewish values from the Torah itself. And the truth is, it's very logic-based. But we have to follow that and speak that truth very clearly and loudly. Our claim to the Holy Land derives only from the fact that one God, who gave the one Torah to his one people, he gave this land to us. The land of Israel is the only place where a Jew can fulfill and study the Torah to its fullest form. Had we taught this truth to these Jews, then their sons and daughters would not be asking ridiculous questions about why did we settle Arab lands? Why did we displace the Arabs? Why are we fighting wars? Can't we just give the Arabs what they want? Those are ridiculous questions to send anyone who has a Torah true education. Such education makes one clearly recognize that this is the land that God gave to Abraham and then Isaac and Jacob and their descendants for all time. It belongs to the Jewish people. If we don't follow this narrative, if we don't stand tall and proud as Jews, the Rebbe argues that any narrative not based on Torah teachings will ultimately lead Jews to conclude they should leave Israel and give up. Someone once asked Lubavitcher Rebbe, how can we justify the claim, which you even want stated at the UN, that the land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people because God said to our forefather Jacob, you shall spread out to the west and the east and the south, north and the south. I will give it to you and your descendants. In other words, it's clearly in the Torah. Prophecy occurs during sleep. Jacob, even in his sleep, dreamed of God. We are the Jewish people. And this is God-given territory to us.
Well, I'm kind of curious about why, since the 5 books of Moses are part of are the subsequent religions like Christianity and Islam, why they don't see that too?
So it's interesting, and I don't want to shred their beliefs or anything. I'm not scholarly enough to do that, but I know people who are and I've listened to them. But at the end of the day, there are many Christians who have heard this, and they believe this, and they support it, and they come to Israel and they support Israel. But their belief is that they have replaced us.
Some of them, yes.
That's basically their narrative, right?
But as far as Islam is concerned, first of all, they were latecomers to the game.
Yeah.
And they were a lot like Martin Luther later in Europe. Martin Luther also thought that he could, now that he did the Reformation, the Jews would flock to his banner. Well, they didn't. And then he turned into a vicious anti-Semite. Exactly the same with Muhammad when he could not convert the Jews because he thought he had them and they would flock to his banner. They didn't. and he turned into a vicious anti-Semite. And the Islamists to this day follow that particular strain of thought.
So most of us, when we have in the most simplest terms, if we have a strong belief in something, we want to get everybody else to believe that. And religion is one of the biggest forms of that, right? To the point where we have seen throughout our history that if they can't convince us, then they'll kill us.
Yeah. Well, the Jews are different. We really don't give a damn what anybody believes so long as they act right.
And we're not looking to convert anybody, right?
Yeah.
So the Rebbe argues that the Torah narrative alone provides the stable ground for the Jewish claim to the land of Israel. Without a thorough commitment to the Torah narrative and values, even some among the Jewish people will reach conclusions that we should leave. So regarding the peace now, and Pam, your question, why do we even listen to others, right? So it's the insecurity of the Jewish people about the nations of the world and the influence of their narratives that weakens us to make strange things like giving away our homeland, right?
Well, they also provide us weapons. So, I mean, how should I put this? If we don't listen to them, we don't get the weapons, and then we can't,
Jeff,
talk from a position of strength.
Jeff, that is a Jewish insecurity.
Yep.
In the Torah, there's a story about the Abraham and the 4 kings and the 5 kings.
Yep.
And the Torah shares us that the 4 kings overcame the 5 kings. Why does it share that part of the story? To let us know these are not 4 little kings. These are mega powers in their era. And when Lot was taken captive, Abraham heard about it. He went to war against them, which is ludicrous if you think about the numbers. It's absolutely ludicrous. But that's not the point. Right is right. And so therefore, Abraham went to war against the 4 kings. God helped him, supported him, and you see the results. For Israel to be worried about America's opinion is to put God to shame.
Yeah,
We should be worried about God.
We've been conquered by the Greeks. We've been conquered by the Babylonians. We've been conquered by the Romans. So,
And if you look at
Still
every one of those
exist,
examples,
and they
But
don't.
we're still here.
if you look at every one of those examples,
but like bad pennies, we bounce back.
There you go. There you go. You got it.
so number one, each of those examples, it became the Jews who left the faith. It was the Jews who let go of their strength, and therefore God allowed us to be conquered by the others. And by the way, as they were just mentioned, we're still here. They're all gone.
Yeah.
So we have the staying power if we have our own sense of security with God. We let go of that, then we're worried about every Tom, Dick, and Harry who's supporting us and what their opinions are. On another occasion, the Rebbe had an opportunity to speak to Israeli ambassador, and he asked to bring the message back. If you want to learn how to deal with America, look at American history. You come on strong and determined, they will respect that. And time again, they will tell you, don't do this or else. And if you do it anyway, they'll slap you on the hand and then go back to business. So the Rebbe said, that's how you handle America. But your first job is to take care of your people.
Yeah.
And that's the top priority. Jewish lives in the Holy Land. And the way to protect that is a relationship with God. So every world power that's come to tackle with Israel, at the end of the day,
They're gone.
if we stay close to God, everything works out. So those concerns about weapons and everything else, stand strong, stand firm, have faith in God, and the rest of it take care of itself. So we just had one conversation about the Peace Now group, who are Jews who want to give away Jewish territory for all the wrong reasons, but their focus is on, let's have peace now, we'll figure out the details later. You can only have peace with a partner that wants to have peace. We know they don't, let it go. That is not a pragmatic approach, period. But there's another set of Jews that are religious Jews who think we should give away Israel. Where are they coming from? Let's understand that part, right? So these are essentially religious Jews, and they're using Torah values that are historical Torah perspectives, and they want to say, therefore, we should give away this land. If you carefully inspect their ideas, they are pragmatically dangerous, and they don't actually cohere with Torah view. And let's go over some of those ideas. 3 oaths. The Torah talks about 3 oaths. The Talmud teaches that God issued 3 oaths concerning the Jewish people and their relationship with the nations of the world. What are those 3 oaths? Number 1, the Jewish people are not to ascend to the land of Israel as a wall, quote, as a wall, namely forcefully and en masse. In other words, when God sent us into exile, he said, you're not allowed to go back to Israel as a wall, that's the quote, forcefully and en masse. Number 2, the Jewish people are not to rebel against the nations, meaning when God sent us into exile, we don't rebel against the nations. Number 3, the nations are not to subjugate the Jewish people excessively. We're in exile. We're exiled from our home, but we should not be subjugated excessively. So some people cite the first 2 oaths as a proof that the Jewish people may not defend themselves and must acquiesce to all demands of the non-Jewish nations. They argue that any form of Jewish self-defense would constitute a violation of these oaths, which we will prove wrong, but understand the source of what they're talking about. Instead, the Jewish people must wait for the arrival of Mashiach, when God will miraculously redeem us and give us the land, and until then, we're not permitted to establish a sovereign state in the land of Israel. So again, these are part of the Jewish people who are more religious. They're accepting the Torah, and they're saying that God says we can't have a sovereign state in Israel until Mashiach comes. And that's true. At the same sense, we're going to look into, but what does that mean today? Right? The second one, another argument advanced against Israel's right to self-defense, is the Talmudic teaching, do not provoke a small Gentile. Direct quote, right? Some interpret this to mean that Jewish people may not assert their rights to the land or defend themselves because doing so would provoke the small Gentile, meaning that we're worried that if we provoke, for example, the Palestinians or less powerful countries, other countries, powerful countries like Russia, will step in and create the war. They argue that our actions would to provoke the great Gentile, which would be the United States, Russia, UN. We have to be timid. But we're going to show the fallacy in that concept as well. So the Rebbe offers a number of arguments refuting the relevance of these 3 oaths in contemporary policy. First and foremost, what we started the whole conversation with, Pikuach Nefesh, saving Jewish lives. The Rebbe notes that both the 3 oaths and the admonition against provoking the Gentiles are irrelevant given the concern of Pikuach Nefesh, saving lives. Neither of these arguments are cited in the Code of Jewish Law. So yes, there's a comment in the Gemara that talks about these 3 oaths, but it's not halachically binding because it's not brought forward as Jewish law. It's not in the code of Jewish law. So the statements against provoking the Gentiles, it's Talmudic advice, but it's not law. In contrast, Talmud and Code of Jewish Law clearly rule that Jews living in any location have an obligation to defend themselves when their lives are threatened. Pikuach Nefesh, saving a Jewish life, is the top priority. Any threat against that life is a top priority, even it includes desecration of Shabbos. How much more so when it's not even Shabbos and you can do something in advance? So when it comes to Pikuach Nefesh, saving lives, this is not relevant. Code of Jewish law. Yes, there are 3 oaths. It's recorded, but they're not the end law. They're advice. Don't start up with the goyim. Don't mess with them. But if they're messing with us, take
That's
them on.
back.
Self-defense. You have a responsibility to defend Jewish lives. So, therefore, there's absolutely no reason that these people are claiming. There's absolutely no reason with those who advocate concessions. It is contrary to clear ruling of Code of Jewish Law. There's only one essential factor: saving as many Jewish lives as possible. And so all of those things, those arguments that they're coming up with, are totally irrelevant. And in fact, I would even say they're not only irrelevant, they're a slap in the face. They're ridiculous. Pikuach Nefesh, that's the main thing. Let's look at those, examine those arguments through the lens of the 20th century history. The Rebbe dismantles the relevance of the principles of these 3 oaths and do not provoke by providing historical context for the Jewish people's presence in Israel. Why are we currently in Israel? We cannot, chas v'shalom, repeat the mistakes of the past when, out of fear of provoking Washington, as we just said, terrible decrees were allowed to happen. There were Jews at that time who said, we need to be silent. We must not start up with President Roosevelt. When others responded, Jews are in danger. Trains are traveling to concentration camps. Those who said not to engage the government retorted, don't provoke the small Gentile. In other words, don't start up with the government. Lives are at risk. We're not even talking about this concept of don't provoke the Gentiles. Lives are at risk. Code of Jewish law. That's the bottom line. This timidity contributed to the fact that the United States ultimately did not bomb the railroad tracks leading to the camps, as demonstrated by reliable historical documents. The United States had the opportunity to take action, and it was some Jews who mistakenly said that we should not contend with Washington, and hence no action was taken.
I think that they weren't doing it for that reason. The idea was win the war.
Use the pronoun who. Who wasn't doing what?
What?
You were using a pronoun. Who wasn't doing what?
There were Jewish leaders, rabbis at the time, who told Roosevelt they wanted him to not bomb the camps, but win the war as soon as possible, because they realized that if American air crews were dying bombing these camps, that could hamper the war effort. And that would strategically not be a good position when we needed to win the war as soon as possible to save the most Jewish lives. Bombing those camps was not going to do much.
Not the camps, but the railroad tracks to the camps.
The railroad tracks. That was the request, the railroad tracks, right? And again, going back
to 2020, it's hard to say whether that would have made a difference or not. They can build railroad tracks overnight. They did it all the time.
But that's what we talk about when we ask the question about what does God say we should do? What is God's instructions? What does the Code of Jewish Law say? The Code of Jewish Law says very clearly, save Jewish lives now. Don't worry. Don't take inaction for fear of what will come. Do what God says now. Protect Jewish lives now, here, now. The rest of itself, history will take care of itself. But to be out of timidity, to not save Jewish lives, we can actually do something about it now, that's the priority.
Despite popular opinion, Roosevelt was not a great friend of the Jews. And as far as I'm concerned, the State Department has always been virulently anti-Semitic in the day.
The State Department has always been. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
Roosevelt, not so much. I think he.
Well, he was wishy-washy, but he listened to the State Department. Same difference.
So the bottom line is our job is not about the State Departments or other people's opinions. Our job is to look, what does Torah say?
Yeah.
What does the code of Jewish law say? If we understand what God wants, then God's on our side. Everything will work out fine. Every time
These
we
were
start.
rabbis that talked to him about this.
Pardon?
These were rabbis that talked to Roosevelt about this.
And there were the rabbis who were not following code of Jewish law to its letter.
There were a couple that were different, but they were ignored.
And the focus was the concern about what the nations will think.
Yeah.
It's the same old concern. What will the neighbors say, right?
Not what the nations will think. It's why would people send their children to die for Jews going what they thought were well, they knew what was going on in these concentration camps, but you see what I'm saying here?
Right. But the bottom line is
versus
government
destroying German factories versus destroying German military targets.
And part of German military targets, yes, like you said, they can rebuild the railroads, but enough damage is done, it makes a difference also. So again, the focus is how do you save lives here and now? Don't get lost in the concern for what others will say.
I disagree on this point.
Okay, I'll drink to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the Jewish leadership and their disciples who have influence over policy in the land of Israel are not ashamed to use their influence in the same misguided way. They urge Israel not to defend itself and promote U.S. foreign policies that leave Israel vulnerable to harm.
Yep.
Rebbe argues that the historical record demonstrates the tragic consequences of misapplying this concept, this teaching of don't provoke the Gentiles. Unforgivable sin and a violation of paramount principle of Pikuach Nefesh. The Rebbe is unforgiving when people prioritize other things than Pikuach Nefesh, saving lives. The Jewish code of Jewish law focus on priorities.
There were also Jewish lives in those air crews.
And God can protect them too. Rabbi Shalom Volpo, one of the key expositors of the Rebbe's teachings on Israel's security, he clarifies the distinction between establishing a Jewish state for nationalistic purposes and immigrating to Israel to save lives. So in other words, the approach of establishing a state for the purpose of Jewish nationalism, to institute a Jewish kingdom, that's fundamentally flawed. When Mashiach comes, there'll be a Jewish state. It'll be under a proper rulership. But to do so now, wrong. That's not the point. Besides the fact that this government is not based on Jewish law to begin with, the very idea of conquering the land during the time of exile and establishing Jewish rule in that land through rebelling against the nation, that does contradict the three oaths. However, we're looking back at the 20th century. Immigration to the land of Israel was for the purpose of saving lives. That's a halakhic mandate. That's a Jewish law mandate. Save Jewish lives. Halakha obligates the Jewish people to form an organized Jewish defense force and confront them with weapons. So the movement to Israel in the 20th century is all about saving lives. And when there are enemies that want to hurt Jewish people, halacha demands you arm yourself and go against them. Now, once the Jewish people are already in Israel, as a result of the practical reality of a place to live and a place to be at peace, right? Now the prohibition to leave the land, that's another thing. Once a Jew comes to Israel, you're not allowed to leave. This has been an interesting discussion, especially about visitors.
Is that only like Aliyah, or does it include just a trip to Israel?
So there's the argument about the trip to Israel. But I can tell you the Lubavitcher Rebbe never went. Because he felt that he couldn't, if he went, he couldn't leave. And because his job is here. And he never took a day off. So, once one is already in the land of Israel, they are forbidden to leave it according to the ruling of Maimonides. The Rambam says, it is forbidden to leave Israel to go to a foreign land. So there are millions of Jews in the Holy Land, and the Gentiles want us to put these millions of Jews in mortal danger. It is forbidden to listen to them. One must strongly oppose their agenda. The current situation has no connection to these three oaths, not to the oath about ascending as a wall, and not to the oath about rebelling against the nations. It's all about Pikuach Nefesh, saving Jewish lives. Outside of Israel, the country that took in more Jews during the Holocaust was Australia.
Yeah.
Because they had no quota. And it's fascinating if you think back on, this is my personal statement here. If you look back on the historical context, right? Like Australia is like this little blip on the map. And it's not doing a whole lot, right? Then in World War II, all these Jews moved there. And now all of a sudden it's a force to contend with. Not in business and in commerce. It's like, I've been to the Holocaust Museum in Sydney. Very fascinating museum. And it's a round structure. And it begins with World War I and the conclusion of World War I, the Treaty at Versailles, and how that leads into World War II. And it begins at the bottom and curves its way up in the building, going through the history of the times, how one thing led to another. At the very top of the museum, the very last room, is a dark room with a light on in the center, focused on a pile of children's shoes.
Yeah.
That's the last exhibit. When you leave that exhibit, you go out a door, you think you're leaving the exhibit, you go out a door, and you're now at the atrium above the building. Skylights, open sky, and there are life-size portraits hanging all over the room. And underneath each life-size portrait is the name of who that person is and their contribution to Sydney. I love this part of the museum because, like so many times you go to a Holocaust museum, you walk out feeling
depressed,
forlorn and broken, and what can you do, right? Here's the answer. You build up the world. The Jews that left the Holocaust and came to Sydney, they literally put Australia on the world map. And you look at the names and the businesses, it's amazing, right? So, Pikuach Nefesh, saving lives. Once you're in Israel, not supposed to leave. You have to protect Jewish lives. So it has nothing to do with this other piece, has nothing to do with Jewish law, protect Jewish lives. It's not about a Zionist state. It's not about social. It was about saving Jewish lives. And once you're there, protecting the investment that's there. So, relating to Zionism and Zionist leaders, there's a piece here we have to look at. Although the leaders of the Chabad movement opposed Zionism, opposed the Zionist movement, especially when it's primarily a nationalist ideology in Europe, their stance, the Chabad movement the stance took on a more complex character once the Zionist groups became active in Israel. The shift was particularly pronounced after the Holocaust, when the Jewish presence in Israel had become imperative to the protection and the preservation of Jewish life. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe acknowledged that the vital importance of establishing a safe haven for the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland. It's not about Zionism. It's not about a socialist movement. It's about protecting Jewish lives and establishing a safe haven for Jewish people. 1947, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, 243 days before the state of Israel was founded, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe addressed the efforts of young Jews working to secure Jewish settlements in Israel and establish a state in light of the impending British withdrawal and the coming Arab onslaught. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said in a public statement on Rosh Hashanah, "In the Holy Land, may it be built and established. There are young people who are sacrificing themselves for the Jewish people. They are doing great work. May the Almighty strengthen them and grant them success. While they must improve their observance of practical mitzvahs, such as observing Shabbos, putting on tefillin, and keeping kosher, and so on, they are just human beings. We all have our shortcomings. The greatest effort must be made to bring them closer to the fulfillment of practical mitzvahs. However, for the good they do with their passionate Jewish self-sacrifice, all Jews, regardless of affiliation, should bless them and declare, may their hands be strengthened." So despite taking issue with the lack of halacha observance on the part of these key players in the Jewish Yishuv community movement, on the eve of the state of Israel's founding, the previous Rebbe nonetheless applauded their self-sacrifice on behalf of the Jewish people. Again, we're talking about saving Jewish lives. 1948, after Israel's miraculous defeating of the 5 Arab armies, the Rebbe saw this as further proof against the contemporary relevance of the 3 oaths. In other words, 1948, there was nothing short of a miracle. That was clearly God's hand. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe at that time said, well, clearly, God intends for us to be here, because he's protected us to be here. So Israel's continued victories in its wars, despite formidable odds, is a clear indication that God decided to return the land to the Jewish people with open miracles. We're talking about something that the Holy One, blessed be he gave to the children of Israel in a supernatural manner. Everyone admits the Jewish people did not receive the land in return for their own abilities, but obviously miraculous. Since we're now at the end of a Gullus, meaning we've been in Gullus so long, the end is near, right before the time of the Geula, the redemption, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, blessed be he gave the children of Israel additional parts of the land of Israel, and therefore the children of Israel must be in those parts of the land of Israel. In other words, once we conquered lands in those wars, clearly that was miraculous. Clearly God wants us to be there. We need to stay there and affirm our presence there. Open miracles make it such that giving away land demonstrates a total ingratitude for the miracles God has given us. To give away the land that God has given us and give that away is a total disrespect for the miracles. Once a Jewish community is already living in Eretz Yisrael, it's obvious that conquering Jerusalem for security of those living in the land of Israel has no connection to the 3 oaths. We're not talking about going up as a wall or anything else. This is not to hasten the Mashiach. It is all about security, protecting Jewish lives. Especially the case during the 6-day war. There was no intention at all to conquer Jerusalem. It was on nobody's battle plans. On the contrary, the Israeli leaders called on the king of Jordan many times not to go to war against us. And afterwards, when he did not heed the call, they attacked Israel and Jerusalem. They fought against him in a defensive war, totally defensive war. In the tumult of the battle, the commanders advanced and found themselves surprisingly conquering Jerusalem. The political leadership did not intend to take this action or achieve this outcome. So the claim about leaving Israel because of don't ascend like a wall, don't come in force, it was an accident, for God's sake. It was all about saving Jewish lives. There's no intention of bringing the redemption before its time. It was rather something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God blessed be He gave us against our own free will and against the will of those who planned the war's objectives. Through
I have a
divine
quote that
providence-
I have a quote that I really like, and it may have been Ben Gurion who said it. I'm not sure, but in order to be a realist in the Middle East, you have to believe in miracles.
Yep. Through divine providence, the course of defensive war against the enemies necessitated, from a military and security standpoint, the conquest of Jerusalem and all the other territories. So these concerns about trying to bring Mashiach quicker and the oaths that were taken about not disturbing the Gentile, this is all about saving Jewish lives. And that is a code of Jewish law mandate we have to do. In a letter to Zalman Shazar, Israel's president from 62 to 73, the Rebbe reiterated the importance of basing our claim to the land on the Torah narrative, the true Jewish values. In other words, stay focused. It's all about God and the Torah. And the Rebbe said in his letter to Zalman Shazar, some criticize me for supporting Israel, saying, why did you invoke the Torah concepts of the land of Israel, the Holy Land, and the covenant between the parts and the mixing in the Almighty with respect to a modern state, a Zionist state? After all, those who strove for the establishment of the state of Israel, these are not Torah observant people. And they say that the state was founded in 1948, after the British left. Representatives of the nations of the world, the UN, agreed to approve the establishment of the state. It's like that people are attacking the Rebbe for supporting Israel because of the way it came about, right? The Rebbe's religious opponents critiqued him for defending this godless enterprise. And the Rebbe stated, I respond that this framing is completely false. The Jewish people's presence in Israel is not new. Rather, in the year 1948, they liberated an important part of the land of Israel, which was historically ours, and also conquered a certain area outside of it, adding to the land of Israel. So it's, again, it all comes back to, it's about saving Jewish lives. Stop focusing on white papers and Balfour and UN. God gave us the land. It is our job to protect the Jewish lives that are there. You'll see at every Chabad event in America, there may be an American flag, there will not be an Israeli flag. Because we're not acknowledging the political state of Israel. We're talking about there are Jews in Israel, a lot, and we have a halachic Jewish law mandate to protect those lives. That's what's at risk here. So the rationale behind this principle of don't provoke the small Gentile is that engaging in provocative behavior will lead the nations of the world to attack us. Given this is the case, the Rebbe explains, this rule does not apply with respect to Israel's security. In the context of Israel's security, concessions themselves are a provocation. The Rebbe's reasoning is that if Israel as a nation is resolute in asserting its rights, other countries will respect that position. If Israel makes concessions, it will simply provoke other countries to demand even greater concessions. Give an inch, they're going to take a mile, right? Give a finger, they'll take an arm. Stop making concessions. God gave us this land, one miracle after another after another. We've seen it even in our own times. The level of miraculous support from God to be there is insane. That's our relationship with God. We need to stand tall and not back down to political pressures from other countries. God will take care of us. Summarizing tonight, we've shown that despite the claims to the contrary, the Torah narrative, the Torah story, does in fact endorse the Jewish people claim to the land of Israel. Our right to defend it, to hold on, The various arguments presented in the Torah's name against our claim to the land, or to fight the right to defend it, to hold on to it, is a Torah policy. Torah policies must be based on the paramount importance of protecting Jewish lives, settling and securing the God-given land, dealing with the reality as it is rather than on misconceptions about what would appease those who cannot be appeased. Only a resolute stance combining authentic Jewish values and hard-nosed realism can provide a path to true and lasting peace. To achieve victory, we need to communicate our narrative passionately and cultivate that passion within ourselves, and even more importantly, within our children and those around us. The land is God-given to us. Through miracles in our generation, God has brought us home to it. We have a Torah obligation in Jewish law to protect Jewish lives. Any types of concessions or giving in are seen as weakness. The only way towards actual lasting peace for every human being in the Middle East is for the Jewish people to stand tall and proud. This is our land, God-given land, and we're going to hold it.